think that there's always a temptation. Maybe it's a natural human reaction to want to reduce things to black and white. And maybe it's inescapable. But throughout this pandemic, I catch myself observing things and corralling things that I've witnessed into less and less categories. For example, some people on the left may do this politically with, let's say, Trump voters. They may corral them into a category where they call them an idiot. And let's say Trump voters may corral other voters, Democratic voters, into their own idiot category. For the first time in my life, I had a discussion about Trump. And I blame it entirely on the pandemic, because normally I wouldn't have time for that. And I've been on social media. I wouldn't say more, I would say less than usual, but I've been exploring more social media like other platforms. And for me, other platforms means Facebook, because it's somewhere that I never visit. And I noticed that Facebook has become a political battleground. I don't know how long it's been that way, but I'm pretty sure I've heard that it's been that way for years. And I've seen posts from people where I, as a writer, I'm aware of how long it takes to write things. And I've seen posts from people, let's say this particular one that I'm thinking of, that is pro-Trump, where this person must have spent like 3 hours putting this post together, because I know what it takes to write something that's clear. And they had references and they had links. You have to go and find the links. So just to make something clear is difficult. Anyhow, I'm like, I can't believe this much time is being spent on this dude. And when I say something like that, somebody will say, like, what do you mean this dude? Like, do you know who this dude is? I'm like, no, I don't know who this dude is. Do you know who this dude is? And they think that they know who this dude is. I know this dude as an ex-World Wrestling Federation. I think it used to be called WWF before it was called WWE. And he was involved in pro wrestling. And he even fought with people on the sidelines as a manager, like a Don King type of person. And we all know how trustworthy Don King is being a legend to be. But he's this type of guy. And that's how I know him. And he's the host of a show that I never watched. It's called the something where he said, "You're fired." So getting back to my corralling of my narrowing, my simplifying of things, is all of these things that I mentioned about politics, and then more recently about the pandemic, to where I have gotten, as I mentioned in my last podcast, I've gotten conspiracy theories, everything from child sex trafficking, child sex trafficking tunnels in New York that are filled with people. If that is true, I will be like children of men. I'll be like, that is amazed. I would be amazed. And I've gotten that 5G network is working in, as I mentioned in my last podcast, with in conjunction with a virus and nanoparticles. And I've heard that it's a staged pandemic for economic power, a power grab. And there's a few more. And what I notice is like people in general, Americans, because this is where I live, I think they are not used to being out of control. America is always in control, and when it is not in control, it's like a rainy day in Los Angeles. Everybody loses their shit. Like they don't know what the fuck to do. They're like, what? They're like, blah, blah. What do you mean? What do you mean I can't go to the beach? Or what do you mean I have to stay home? Or what do you mean I have to be on par with everybody else in the world? Is sometimes how it looks to me. Americans are often used to being able to outsource the awful tasks and the burdens of our actions, right? And this is a case where this is a meta issue. This is a case where you could say, quote unquote, God, a higher power, or a more ancient, older power, or however you want to put it. It is something that trumps, pardon the pun, it's something that trumps the entire order of what we have. We have a society that is built on technology, and there was Steve Jobs, and there is Microsoft, and there are business magnates that are dominating the market, and then this tiny virus comes that you can't even see, and it just brings everything to a halt. And this is what life is really like, I think. This is what life has been like for millennia. And so people, to me, as far as their reasoning goes, look like people who are drowning. And they are reaching for anything or anyone to explain it all away. So which brings me to my simplification of it all. It's a hypothesis, and my simplification is ambiguity. And I think that people in general, at least in America, to which I could speak more clearly for, are very ambiguity averse. Nobody likes it. And as someone who used to drink beer at a normal pace, as someone who at one point smoked pot many years ago, as someone who used to vape nicotine, and then one day I just quit everything. I just quit anything like that. And one night, actually. And the reason that I did that was because I was tired of not being in control. And it may sound silly that if you have a beer or 2 beers at night, or a glass of wine, that you're saying that you're somebody that's out of control. Well, what I didn't like about it, because I quit coffee too at the time. I drink coffee now. But what I didn't like about any of that was that I don't have to have my ex. No. And I was like, I don't need any of this. I'm fine the way that I am. Sorry, consumerist America. I don't need your jeans. I don't need your coffee. I don't need your brew. I don't need anything. And it was one of the most intoxicating, scary, liberating things that I've ever done in my life. Because at that moment, I won. And it's not a permanent win. It's something that requires maintenance. But at that moment, I won. I won because I, to the best of my ability, took control of absolutely everything in my life. And that's not to say that you have control over your life, because you have very little control over your life. But you control what you can. And so, judging on that scale, I won. And when I did that, I noticed that the thing that plagued me at night when I'm used to having my beer was ambiguity. And I realized that maybe I'm not too different from everybody else. Maybe everybody else is doing these things for more or less the same reason. That when they come home, when I would come home at night after working or whatnot and have my beer, you know more or less how that substance is going to make you feel. More or less. If you don't have that, you have no idea how you're going to feel. You may be up, you may be down, you may have to face something, you may just not know what the hell you're going through and what you're feeling. So I see the appeal in it. But you can say that after a period of time, I began to get addicted to ambiguity. And like a movie that I was going to sit down to watch, at the end of the day, how am I going to feel tonight? Get the popcorn out. Because I don't know if this is going to be a sad movie or a motivated drama or an action film where somebody goes for a run at night and goes and looks at the river. And that brings me to the simplification, my meta analysis of this, if that's the right term, which is that people are reaching for explanations for what's going on because this is so out of control that this is like their drug, the wanting to explain things in a way that is possibly entertaining and impactful enough to our emotions that we don't have to sit with ambiguity, that we can know that our confirmation that the government is corrupt, that there's a secret organization running things, or that even that viruses mutate naturally and that it came from a bat, whatever your explanation is. From what I know about viruses, which is very little, but I'm borrowing the words of the experts that I listen to, is that we may never know where it's coming from. And people are getting all their panties in a wad right now because the government is investigating whether or not this virus came from Wuhan, from a laboratory. And they're just investigating it. They didn't say that that's where it came from. So, but that's how people take it. You see, they're investigating it. Okay. And no, you know what? Nobody likes a dude who's level-headed. You know, I noticed that. They're like, shut up. Well, tell me a story about sex trafficking. It's like, I want to hear that one. Right. So, Harvey Weinstein or whatever is salacious, right? Salacious is our middle name, right? That's what gets people to click. Salaciousness is part of outrage, the outrage culture, the outrage algorithm that works so well on people on Facebook, which is something you should look into. But that's what it is. We have trouble sitting with ambiguity. And what do you think about that? So, aside from the ambiguity, I can't stress enough how important that I think it is that you recognize how important this moment in time is. Because never before has the entire technologically modern world come to a complete halt altogether. That means that all of the mythical creatures that would supposedly destroy the world if they didn't keep running, like the economy and the business models and whatnot, have not destroyed the world because they stopped running. And you must admit unless you've been affected by this virus adversely, which is, I'm very sorry to hear if you have, and we may all be affected by this virus in the near future. Supposedly we all will be. But on the other side of the coin is that most people that I talk to are thoroughly enjoying the change of pace in life. And I mentioned this in the last podcast, but it's so important to me that people recognize how important this moment is. Because never again will you have a chance to start anew from a total standstill. Because we've been still, because there's been nothing happening in the economy, or very little, that means that any direction that we take off in a positive way, in a positive note, is a good direction. Now, does that mean that we should take off back in the same way that we've been doing things for the past whatever years, whatever number of years? Does that mean that we should do that? I don't think so. I think the complete opposite, that we should tack the ship in a different direction. And what does that mean? What does that mean? That people have not had time to sit and think for this long. This kind of European style vacation where if you work for a company for a number of years, that you are on vacation every year for like 2 months. What does it mean that you have time to think about your future? We're all having financial troubles. Well, a lot of us are. And it almost doesn't matter because so many of us are. And that's happening around the world. Now, if it was just you, that would be a different story. It would feel differently. But what does it mean for you? I have something here. I'm like, find out what you want to do. We can come out of this better and stronger. So you have a chance now to maybe tack your ship in a direction that is more relevant to actual survival in society. Maybe now that means that we should decentralize even more how we grow food. Right. I know that people have gardens. I know that there's local farms, but I don't think that they can feed everyone. And there should just be an abundance of food everywhere. So people have gardens out front in their yard, and the people that usually have the gardens are people usually who have time and make time to make those gardens. Well, maybe now is a good time to decide to make time and to have time to do that. It's one place. It's one thing you can do. And not everybody's a farmer. Look, I don't want to grow food. I'm not a farmer. And I have a lot of responsibility to take care of my kids. Some people have a 2-parent household. I don't have that. And I don't want to fail at my job of parenting, so it's primary. So, but the thing is, if every block, let's say, had a community garden, if every block had one, where you would put it, I don't know. But it's not impossible. Come on, give me a break. So decentralizing things like that. Now is a good time to think about what you would rather be doing with your life. Do you want to go back to driving for Grubhub? Do you want to go back to being a waiter? Do you want to go back to sitting in traffic? Do you want to, go back to whatever it is, the store that you were working at that is non-essential? Do you want to instead bring your work towards something more essential and doing it in a way that is more distributed? So when one arm of this fragile web, when this one, vein of this fragile web breaks down, it doesn't have a domino effect and breaks all the other ones down. I mean, we ran out of toilet paper in 2 days, maybe? 4 days? The whole country? So there's debate about that. Some people say it's the distribution. I heard from toilet paper people that it's not about distribution. It's that they're not used to making so much consumer toilet paper. because they have to supply buildings and corporations too, and they use different kinds of toilet paper. Like they have these big ass rolls for gas stations and whatnot. So I don't know what, they could just sell those at the store. So the opportunity here is enormous. And the only way that things are going to change is if you at least begin to talk about it, talk about this opportunity and how we can change society, and we don't have to go back to sitting in traffic, because there's been millions of dollars that have been put into decentralized work, into remote work because of this pandemic. So companies of all kinds have been doing remote work, and they keep going, and they're still working, so they don't come into the office anymore. Does that mean that when the pandemic is over, that all that infrastructure that they've built over the course of 2 months, which maybe 3 months after when it's all said and done, that's enough time to build a solid new habit? That's enough time to fall in love with ambiguity again, by the way. But after that period of time, are they just going to go back, abandon that, and everybody's going to go back to sitting in traffic? Because I don't think that our kids are going back to school. So by the end of it, it might even be 5 months that we're doing it like this. And should we not just continue to do things like this and find new ways and explore new ways of doing things like this? As I mentioned before, not in this podcast, but in a previous podcast, how we can have satellite workspaces in your living community. Like if you live in one of those subdivisions, perhaps they can build a workspace where it's an office and you go to work there. You leave your home and you go to work there. So you don't have to sit in traffic and waste 2 hours of your day every day. That's a lot of time. You know, and all of those cylinders running in the same direction to basically go in the same direction for miles and miles. And then you know that the planet, the number one way that people can help the environment is to not drive. And the reason is not only because of the gas and the oil, it's because of all of the materials that go into making the automobile and the maintenance and the pollution that they cause. So how are we going to do that? I don't have an answer for you, right? Like I said before, I don't have an answer for you. I'm coming up with my own answers for me, and they're not great, but I'm working on them. And if you want to know, ask me, and I'll tell you, but I don't think I should talk about it. Not because of, it's just not what I want to get into right now. I don't want to talk about what I'm going to do. I want to talk about the idea of us as a society changing it for the better in this opportunity that is a once in a lifetime opportunity, and I don't want us to squander it. It's a horrible situation, but because it's a horrible situation, we should at least come out of it with something. This podcast episode is brought to you by my Link merch. In case you don't know, I'm a musician, and I started a product called Link Merch, which you can go check it out at linkmerch.us, linkmerch.us. That's linkmerch.us. And this product is for musicians to distribute their music in an artist-centric way, which means that instead of some giant company making the bulk of the money, the artist is one of the people that makes the bulk of the money. Link Merch, my company, makes the least amount of money in this model. Okay, you may wonder, well, how's that going to work? Like, how is that going to dominate and take over the world? Well, as you just may have listened to this podcast, I don't have that kind of mindset, right? And there are plenty of businesses out there that they survive and thrive. Like I know a restaurant near here called Biscotti's. I hope it's still open when this is all done. But that restaurant, like it's not a chain, and it survives and it thrives and people love it. So this product, Link Merch, is, I would call it a boutique product. So how does it work? Link Merch is merchandise that has a QR code and a short URL embedded into the artwork. So merchandise meaning like a t-shirt or stickers. And there's other stuff in the works, but that's what we're doing for now. And when people either scan that QR code or visit that short URL, they arrive at your content, which we host. So go on to linkmerch.us and maybe you'll learn a little bit more about it. I say maybe because I'm trying to figure out the best way to explain it to people, what I'm doing, what I'm actively doing with my own work, because I'm my first customer, right? And the thing is, I'm actually making more money, or before COVID, before the pandemic, I'm making more money than I was making, way more money than I was making from streaming at my gigs by distributing my music in this cool new underground way. So I have expert's dilemma and I'm working it out. I'm working out what people need to hear and what they do not need to hear, what's most important for them. Because I know everything about the product because I created it, okay? Now, regarding the scaling as a business for Link Merch, if you compare Link Merch to, let's say, Spotify doesn't scale either because the artists aren't really getting paid on Spotify either. And the CEOs are getting paid plenty. But so if you think about it, that doesn't scale either, right? They can't figure out how to pay the artists more per play. So Link Merch, if you go to my website, goliathflores.com, you can see a link for Link Merch right on the front page there. And check it out. I would love to hear your opinion about it, any ideas that you have for it. Show it to your musician friends. Tell them about it. And, I also have other products on there. If you appreciate what I'm doing here or in my music or whatnot, if you are not interested in the Link Merch, there's also a button, a menu item at goliathflores.com where you can tip me for this work or any work. I have a Patreon and I have a plethora of ways that you can tip me. And it would be much appreciated right now at this time. I don't have to explain why. But what are you going to do? Hey, we're all in a tough situation right now. Well, not all of us. I know plenty of people whose work is off the chain right now for various reasons. So I am not one of those people. And I look forward to speaking with you again in the very near future. Gracias.